Hello, everybody. Tracy, Mrs. JDog Flanagan with you here today. I'm the co-founder and senior vice president at JDog Brands. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Tactical Treasures podcast, sponsored by the JDog Foundation. Our podcast gives the military community a voice in the veteran space to share their stories of service, how they continue to make a difference in civilian life, and a tactical treasure that has shaped their journey in their military career and business or life. Today, I'm honored to speak with Dr. Pam Arnell, who serves as the executive director for 220, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting veterans, first responders, and Gold Star families. As a military spouse and first responder herself, her leadership is deeply personal. Her husband served 26 years in the Army and Tennessee National Guard before passing away from cancer linked to burn pit exposure. This firsthand experience with sacrifice and healing now drives her strategic vision for the organization. A champion for evidence-based, non-invasive trauma protocols, Dr. Arnell has established vital research partnerships with institutions like Arizona State University to validate 220's mission. Her expertise extends into the public sector through her appointment to the Tennessee Governor's Suicide Challenge Task Force, Tri-Stars and Stripes, an initiative focused on ending suicide among service members and their families. Beyond her executive leadership, Dr. Arnell's career is rooted in service and education. She has an extensive history in suicide prevention and trauma intervention for children and families. Her diverse background includes serving as an adjunct professor for psychology and education at Columbia State Community College, operating as a minority business owner and contributing to civic organizations in Giles County. Hello, Dr. Pam. It is nice to speak with you today. Welcome to Tactical Treasures. And thank you so much for your service and your husband's service to our country.
Thank you. And thank you for having me today. I really appreciate you letting me be in and share about the mission and why it's so important to carry that mission forward.
Right, right. Um, so I would just ask. I'm sorry for your loss with your husband. I know he unfortunately died from burn pit exposure a couple years ago. Um, so is were you, as a mill spouse, were you already kind of in the psychology and education sector, or did what happened to him kind of propel you in a particular direction?
It's kind of funny. I grew up in the Blue family. My dad was in law enforcement, and that's what I had planned on doing. I knew from early on that I wanted to be in a field to, serve and protect and be there, be an advocate for those that don't have a voice or can't find their voice for whatever reason at that time. And back then, uh, 70s, mid 80s, they had a heights requirement. And so my dad was really mad. I told him what I was going to do. And he said, "No, sis, I don't want you going into law enforcement." Knowing that now he knew that I was too short because of that heights requirement, I
Hmm.
was not able to go into law enforcement. So I knew I needed to do something in the helping and advocating field. And that's when I went into the counseling, the psychology field. When I met my late husband, I met him right after he had gotten back from his deployment from Desert Storm.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And so I know that you did do a lot, and you're also a first responder as well, correct? You're
Yes,
attached to a fire company, correct? Fire
yes,
department.
yes. So Giles County Fire and Rescue. We are an all volunteer fire rescue. I joined in 2008, and
Hmm.
actually, we had a very bad tornado that came through and pretty much well ripped a lot of the northern part of the county. And I went to McDonald's and purchased a bunch of biscuits to take and just drop it off because I didn't know who all was out there. And
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of funny because when I got out there, Bruce said, "Hey, come on, you can go ride with me." And I said, "Okay, but I'm just bringing you some food." um, so next thing I know, I'm in the vehicle with him at that time. Like I said, that was in 2008, and he said, "Hey, you should join." And I said, "Okay." So I did. Again, knowing that it's in that, that serving and protecting mindset. So
Mm-hmm.
I joined in 2008. And it was funny because later on, the Giles County Sheriff's Department had a reserve deputy program that they had started. So I was one of the first reserve deputies within that reserve program um, when it first started, way back in the day. So I actually did get to do 5 years as a reserve deputy until I became the youth service officer. And that job was basically um, serving and protecting children, any of the kids that came to court for whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
My boss was the judge at that time. And so I stayed as now I'm an auxiliary member with the Giles County Fire and Rescue. I'm still very involved and do a lot of things, supporting them, helping them. We were able to apply and get a grant from the Gary Sinise Foundation. We needed a lot of equipment. We needed a lot of turnout gear. We had, I want to say it was about 10 turnout gear that were expired. And
Oh,
so I
wow.
knew, and so I had actually had a meeting with Bobby and with the Gary Sinise Foundation, and he asked a little bit about me, and I told him what I did. So he kind of helped me connect with the person that handled the like for the grants for Tennessee with the Gary Sinise Foundation, and we were able to get a lot of turnout gear. We were able to get a lot of new equipment, hoses, and stuff like that for the fire trucks.
Wow. Wow. Because that can be dangerous if the
Mm-hmm.
gear is expired.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because I used to back in the day, I was an EMT. So
Mm-hmm.
I ran ambulance work for over 10 years. And, we worked very closely with our local fire department. We were, I, had rescue gear and the hat and everything because I was always the one in the vehicle with
Mm-hmm.
because I'm tiny too, like you. I'm only I'm only 5 foot, and so I was always the one climbing in the window with doing patient care while they were using the jaws of life outside, cutting open the car. So,
Yes.
um,
Yes.
so I know all about that. So yeah, so it seems like almost everything that you've kind of done in the public sector sort of helped you and prepared you for what you're doing now. You're the executive director of 220. Could you tell me how that journey came about? How did you get there?
Oh, that is so funny. So because of my clinical background, the first responders, be it fire, law enforcement, EMTs in Giles County, they're going to come to me. I've already got that trust with them, that rapport with
Mhm.
them. And so my fire chief, well, he's retired now, but my fire chief had been through the training of 220. And so if you ever come to Giles County in Tennessee and ask for Big Mama, they're going to ask you why you want to talk to Big Mama. That's me. I got that nickname a long time ago,
I love it.
many, many years ago. So I am known as Big Mama. But what happened is he said, "Hey, Big Mama, I want you to go through this training." And I said, "Nope, I don't have time for it. We're good." Like I'm busy. Um, and so, long story short, I finally caved and agreed to do the training out of respect for him. And I told him, I said, "I want you to know anytime I'm ever asked on a podcast, I tell them that I did that because of my respect and love for you." It's funny how, it's funny how God turns things around. But part of that training, you actually are going through the process. And so, I had 3 calls at the fire department. I had 2 calls when I was a reserve deputy at the sheriff's department that were really problematic, to the point that I went to my doctor and said, I'm not sleeping. You need to give me something. And he had me on Ambien. So I was on Ambien for years. I went through the training, and as part of that, I said, I'll be the guinea pig, because I was very skeptical. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, very skeptical. I just said, there's nothing this easy. I'm in the psychology world. It's just not that simple.
Right.
Um, and it was funny. So the training was online. And, you know, we took a break, and I had gone through the process, and I could feel this just immediate shift. Um, Basically what happens is, when you are going through, when you have like a traumatic event, that event is stuck in that amygdala. We do not see trauma as a disorder. It's neurological, and it can heal. So what happened was, I went through it, felt that immediate shift, and we took a break, and I walked out, and my husband looked at me, and he said, I thought you were in training. I said, I've been in there all morning long. And he said, you have been drinking. And I said, my Coca-Cola. And he said, no, 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 no. He said, there's something totally different about you. And unless you experience that immediate shift, it's hard for anyone to kind of really comprehend that.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, no. He said, you look like you have had about 3 glasses of Jack and Coke, Tennessee, Jack Daniels. There you go. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, no, I really haven't, but I feel different. And he said, well, what happened? Because you're not the same as you were when you went in this morning. And I told him, I said, I can't really explain it. I was the guinea pig and went through the process, and now you think I've been drinking Jack and Coke, which I haven't. And so that was the first night that I actually slept without Ambien, and that was in 2021.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. So you go through the training, and how did you get to be executive director?
Well, one of the things that I had told the prior group of individuals was they really needed to have the research. They had kind of in-house research, and I said, in order to get this where it needs to be, you need to have the academia. Not that I agree with it, but that's just the realistic way of it. And so I started the process of getting the independent research for 220. I spent all of 2021 doing that. And then, I reached out to different universities, and Arizona State University reached back out to me. I had a meeting with them and told them, what was going on. We had pre and post assessments. So we do a pre assessment for trauma, anxiety, and depression. And then we do a post assessment after they're done. And then it was mid 20, almost late 2021, they started saying, we really want you to come on and run the program. And I said, nope, got to pray about it. And I said, and I did that for a year, by the way. I said, well, I have to have confirmation. And so every time that I was asked to, think about coming on, that's what I would tell them. No, I'm going to pray about that. And it was funny, because I'll never forget it. On Memorial Day in 2022, my husband and I were headed to our son's, and Nick called, and he said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, we're getting ready to leave." And he said, "We want you on as the executive director." So by this point, I had already started that research piece with Arizona State
Hmm.
University, and I said, no, I'm good. I got to pray about that, And it was, I promise you, it was almost like God just kind of slapped me in the forehead and said, how many confirmations do you
Right.
need? I am giving those confirmations to you. How many do you need, girl? And I'm going, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And then I became the executive director in
Oh, wow.
November of 2022.
Oh, I love that story. Oh, that's great. Um, so, um, so I know that I've done some research on the website and everything, and I know that you have two programs, the trauma healing process and the emotional healing process. Could you explain to me the difference between these two programs?
Ken. So those are the actual processes that we use when someone has trauma or has anxiety and depression related to trauma. It's not for any other mental health diagnoses. This is specifically for trauma, which is more neurological based. The trauma healing is basically steps that we will run you through, and it's all done virtual. So, our mission clients do not leave the home. They're able to stay at home. They don't have to go to a facility. They don't have to do any of that. They can remain home. But with the trauma healing, it's really getting someone in a safe place before, safe place after those events. And they're really disconnected. So they're not watching those events. But the other piece to that is it's not that traditional talk therapy. So if, anyone that's in the armed forces, and especially those that have served in combat and first responders, they don't want to talk about the content anyways. Um,
Mm. Yeah.
and so with the trauma healing, that's to basically reset the traumatic events from the amygdala to where you can go get that REM sleep that you've not had for years. And then the emotional healing is going to be for the negative emotions. So, negative emotions are going to be fear, terror, helplessness, guilt. We get a lot of survivor guilt from combat vets, especially if they lost any servicemen and women, during combat. So, taking those negative emotions and getting the learnings, but being able to release those negative emotions. A lot of people has heard of EMDR. We do not use EMDR, but I equate EMDR because EMDR falls under the neurological linguistic programming.
Okay. And what is EMDR?
That's more EMDR is more of like an desensitization. You're having to talk about that event, relive it over and over and over and over. And it
Got
can
it.
take up to 18 months for the EMDR to work. Some people who go through EMDR actually trigger and become worse. So there's not
Mhm.
really just a one size fits all when you really think about it. But the difference is our process falls under the neurological linguistic programming along with RTM, reconciliation of traumatic memories. The other piece to that is the average is 2 to 4 sessions. You're not talking about the content. I can make somebody trigger without ever talking about the content. So that protects them, but then that protects my peer coaches so they're not getting that vicarious trauma.
Okay.
And then after they've gone through, again, it's an average of 2 to 4 sessions, and you know they're they're just as amazed because I can't tell you the number of mission clients that have just said that I spent years in therapy. Our president, Justin Rasick, I'll tell a little bit about him, but he's a combat vet. He's in Florida. And so with us being incorporated in Florida, we're a nationwide program because we even serve those that are overseas as well because of the telehealth platform. Well, we met Justin at the Military Family Weekend at Westgate in 2021. And he actually, was in the seminar. Well, Nick started working with him. What we didn't know was after Nick worked with him, I worked with one of the VA counselors. But what we did not know was he already had a plan. So he was there, but he had spent many, many years in therapy. And,
Mm.
and he's even said, my mom is a psychologist. Like I was struggling. I had done everything that I could do. It took one session, 2 hours, and he was just absolutely blown away. He said, I want to pay it forward. So he got trained. He became a peer coach. And then, he worked with hundreds and hundreds. He's worked with a lot of our mission clients, and he's now the president.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is that there's several peer coaches that actually take clients through either the trauma healing process or the emotional healing process. And how
Yes.
do you determine when somebody comes to you, how do you determine what process they should go through?
So, anyone that comes through, they're doing the pre-assessment. It's a trauma screen, depression screen, and an anxiety screen. And then after they're done, we'll do the same screening, which is, the post-assessment. But so Trisha's our social worker. She's amazing. Um, Once Trisha gets the pre-assessments done, and even during the pre-assessment piece, you're not talking about the content. Um, so whatever that score is, we're going to connect them with a peer coach. They can choose between a male or female coach, or
Mm-hmm.
preference either way. What we do is, we have a lot of peer coaches that have been trained over the time who work with our mission clients. So once she does the pre-assessment, she'll ask if they want a male or female. If they want a male coach, we're going to assign them to a male coach. If they want a female, same thing. We're going to assign them to a female coach. The one thing that we tell them, be it if I take the emergency call, because the 800 number that's on that website, it comes to my phone.
Oh,
I was
wow.
sitting in church Sunday, and look, I was getting a text message from a previous combat vet who's been through the program and said, "I need help. I've got a friend here, and he just got out of the hospital, and he said he needs to go through the process." So I'm sitting in church and I'm texting.
Oh my gosh.
Rhonda sitting next to me, she's looking at me. I said, "It's work as a veteran. He's struggling." So I'm sitting there texting, and I said, "Give me just a minute. Do a group text, connect us. I'll take it from there." He was very grateful. He said, "I can't believe that, it was like you reached back out to me. I'm going to get you. If I see that phone ringing, or, if I'm in a meeting, I will message them and say, I'm either in a meeting or working with a mission client. I will reach back out to you. I'm going to let them know that.
Right. Right.
I don't believe in waiting list. I'm available 24/7. Yes, that includes holidays,
Mm-hmm.
because at the end of the day, it's not about me. And everyone that's on my team, they will tell you the same thing. It's not about them. It's about the mission clients that we serve.
Right. Right.
And so we connect them with the
Right.
peer
And
coaches.
and who are tell me who is the demographic of the mission clients that seek you out?
Armed Forces, any branch.
Okay.
We do include the National Guard. You would be surprised at how many nonprofits do not recognize the National Guard. And I kid you not. So after my husband got back, he was in the Army for 8 years. And when he came back from deployment, he rolled over to the Tennessee National Guard, where he was stationed at Joint Force Headquarters in Nashville. So Armed Forces, any branch, any time served, deployed or not, including active duty. We work with a lot of active duty. The other are going to be first responders. So first responders for us are going to be those that would be law enforcement,
Mm-hmm.
firefighters, EMT paramedics. We include 911 dispatchers and corrections. Spouses and minor children living in the home are covered. And then gold and green star families are covered as well. So when I say they're covered, that means they do not pay for any sessions. We strictly rely on donations. We don't have grants. We're always looking for fundraising and funding
Mm-hmm.
opportunities um, to fund the mission.
Hello, viewers and listeners. The JDog Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit whose mission is to prevent veteran suicide and heal veterans' mental health and PTS. 100% of all proceeds goes directly to the organizations we are partnered with. If you go to jdogfoundation.org, you can learn more about our mission, donate, and if you are in need of help, please dial 988. Our motto, saving lives one veteran at a time. Check us out, jdogfoundation.org. Right. And could you just clarify Green Star families? I haven't really heard that term very often.
So Green Star families are going to be those that have come back from combat, or, and they've died by suicide.
Okay, got it. Okay. And so if there is a child of a veteran um, that has had trauma or is struggling with
Mhm.
anxiety and depression and that sort of thing, but they're an adult child, they're do you would they pay a fee to you, or would they not qualify for your program, or how does that work?
So the majority, we do not work with civilians. We send them to Nick. Nick kind of handles the civilians. It's the same process that they go through. Um, but if they are an adult, typically what happens is either them or their spouse or their parents were in the military. I'm not going to turn somebody away that's served. I will work with them on my own, just because I don't want anyone struggling. I just don't.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so it's rewarding when you're working with someone, and it never gets old. After I've worked with someone, and the coaches are the same way. After they've worked with someone, and you can see that difference. You can see just that shift that I was talking about earlier, and they're
mm-hmm.
just going like, I don't know what to do. It's so
Right.
just
And so, and are you the only organization that kind of uses these processes that you've developed, just, part of just your mission, or is this kind of can you get it anywhere else, I guess is what I'm asking.
So no, we the trauma healing process and the emotional healing process is the property of 220.
Okay.
We do with the training. Now, with the training, there's a cost, but we have actually trained a lot of licensed mental health professionals um, who have reached out to be trained in the process. So when they're working with whoever they're working with, they're not having to get exposed themselves to that vicarious trauma. But
Hmm.
as far as the trauma healing and the emotional healing, that is 220.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. I did also read on the website that you have an ambassador program. Is that the same as the peer coach or different?
So when there were some things that were changed when I came in as the executive director, and I was upfront from the beginning. I said, "Look," I said, "when you've got to have that research. Not that I agree with it, but in this world, you just have to have it." But I'm one who believes in relationships. There are mission clients that come in once we've done the healing. Their needs that they a lot of them may need help with like finances or learning how to be able to be without trauma for however many years that they had it. And then what I did is I developed relationships and partnerships with nonprofits that I have vetted. In other words, if I will send my family there, I promise you it's okay for us to send our mission clients there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very picky. And so when I say picky, I'm not going to just use anybody. I won't do that. We have a lot of nonprofits who refer to us all the time, big nonprofits, because a lot of them have been through the process, and they believe in what we do.
Mm-hmm.
So with doing that as the executive director, and again, when I start something, I'm going to pray about it because I don't want to just jump into something.
Mm-hmm.
So I prayed and prayed about the ambassador program. The ambassador program are going to be, a lot of them are very open, that they have been mission clients and pay it forward and are just absolutely, you know, big advocates. And so that's how the ambassador program was created. I started that a year and a half ago. And then in 2025, it was funny, I met Ty. So Ty is a Air Force veteran. He's now in the music world. And I met him through a mutual friend, David. He was doing a podcast with Ty, and as soon as I heard him say he was a veteran, I'm texting David and said, "You better tell that man I said thank you for your service," which David did, and then we connected. And he asked me, he said, "Have you thought about letting them tell their stories and turning it into a song?" Well, I laughed because I said, "Dude, Ty, I sing, but that doesn't mean I sing. Literally, you don't want to hear me sing." And I said, that's not my specialty area. And he said, no, 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 we can take care of that. So a lot of our ambassadors are in the music industry now. Ty Warner is very, he's been up there in the ranks in the Air Force, but he has a passion for letting our mission clients turn those stories into a song. So that's actually how 220 Heroes Untold Stories came about in 2025.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and so any
That's
of our mission clients that want to go through it, and we've got several of them that are doing that. And, we're actually now looking to find a studio that would be willing to let us have those produced. So,
Oh, wow. That's really neat. Um, so I understand you have an upcoming program in April of 2026. Can
yes.
you, is that a secret or can you tell us a
So
little bit about that?
I can. One of our peer coaches, he's actually a combat vet, but he's now a chaplain, and he reached out to me, and he's been to the training, and he took the training in August. And how we got connected is someone who will send mission clients to me all the time, like calling me directly and saying, I have someone here. Uh, this peer coach reached out to him, and he said, just call Pam. He said, dude, it's 7 o'clock at night. He said, promise you she's going to take your call. Just call her. It was 7 o'clock my time, 8 o'clock his time. Um, and he actually had his battle buddy that was in a really, really rough way. And so I just started working with him immediately, right then and there, to get him out of that crisis. And he said, I want to do a boots on the ground. And I said, okay. He said, I've been praying about it. So if you're already saying you're praying about it, I got to really listen to it, because I'm not going to be the one to tell God no. I'm just not going to do it. Um, so basically, it's a boots on the ground program, where we actually now have 6 that are in that area. In April, we will be launching the actual program. There's going to be an event there. And one of the things we're looking at is looking for sponsors so we can fly our ambassadors that are in the music industry to go down and perform for the troops that are deployed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds so exciting. I love that. That's great. Um, you guys are doing great work. I love hearing about 220, and it sounds like you've just done a wonderful thing with a lot of folks, have gotten a lot of success with your processes. But Pam, we've come to the time in our podcast where I have to ask you a very important question. I have to ask you, what is your tactical treasure that you would like to share with us today?
Mm. For anyone that has trauma and is struggling, all I want you to do is to have the healing and have the peace that you absolutely deserve to have.
Mm.
For those men and women that put on a uniform to serve and protect us, I just know the things that my husband talked to me about, and he wouldn't go into detail. I'm sure, your husband JDog, I bet he didn't really go into a lot of detail because they don't want to talk about it either. But at the end of the day, you absolutely deserve to have that healing and have that peace from all of the things that you experienced, all the things that you saw, all the things that you heard while you were serving and protecting us.
Mm. That's a
And
great
that's,
tactical treasure. I love it. Um, so, just to kind of segue, that kind of goes into my next question. Um, do you have any advice for fellow veterans that are struggling post service?
yes. That was probably one of the things with my husband, that transitioning piece. And
Hmm.
even though was still on the National Guard, he had a hard time because you've got those years in the military, and with the National Guard, you still have that camaraderie. But when you're doing a day to day job, you know, um, if you're struggling post service, just call me. A lot of that is going to be from that trauma, um, that you've not been able to get the healing that you deserve from. And a lot of that is because, the civilian the civilian world is so different, and a lot of people
Hmm.
don't understand it. And I was just the exact same way. So I had a lot of family that served in the military. And I can remember my uncle, um, and he fought in Vietnam. And I remember, you know, you never would go boo or just surprise him or, hey, what's up? You know, you don't want to do that. But the thing about it was being married, um, being in the military family as a spouse for 20
Hmm.
plus years, it's very different. And that transition piece is very difficult for a lot of them because that's what they've known for years was the military.
Right.
Um, but if you're struggling, just call me. I don't want to see you struggling. I don't. You deserve to have that healing.
Yeah. That's great advice. We'll have to share your phone number or share the 800 number. That would be good, right?
I will give you my cell phone number. It's 931-638-7131.
Okay. Thank you, Pam. Um, Pam, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for your time today and for sharing your mission, and thank you for sharing your heart. I can see you wear the mission all over you, and it's really a beautiful thing. Um, Before you go, can you tell us where people can find and find out more information on 220?
Sure. Um, First off, I want to thank you again for letting me come in and share about the mission, and share a little bit about my story. But you can go to the website. It is the numbers 22, so 22zero.org, 220.org. The 800 number is on the website. I've already given you my cell phone number. I'm fine when you post it. If you want to post my number, I'm fine with you doing that as well. Um, you can email me at Dr. Arnell, DRARN as in Nancy, ELL at 220.org. There's several ways that you can reach out to me. And if you're struggling, that is the big thing is if you are struggling, please contact me. I don't want to
Okay,
see you struggling. And, you know, we don't want to see the family struggling either because when the spouse is struggling, that family is struggling. And we
sure.
want to see the whole family healed.
Yeah, yeah. This has been amazing, Pam. Thank you so much, and thank you for all that information. We'll be sure to get that out. Um, and thank you so much for your time, ma'am. It's been awesome to meet you and to speak with you and to learn more about 220. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you for having me.
Hello, viewers and listeners. Thank you so much for joining us for this very enlightening Tactical Treasures podcast, where we've just finished up a conversation with Dr. Pam Arnell, who is a military spouse and first responder and also serves as the executive director for 220, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to healing and training veterans, first responders, and gold, green, and silver star families. Their mission is to end suicide and trauma across the U.S. by utilizing non invasive, non clinical, and peer to peer holistic interventions. They believe in a better way to heal the brain from the traumatic and negative emotions that disrupt daily life. Their approach centers on two primary methods: the trauma healing process, specifically designed to address PTSI, and acute stress, the emotional healing process focuses on eliminating extreme negative triggers such as sadness, anger, or shame that often accompany significant emotional events. Together, these processes work to disconnect negative emotions from past traumatic events, whether they occurred in childhood or adulthood. They are committed to removing barriers to care. Coaching is provided at no cost to veterans, first responders, spouses, minor children living in the home, and Gold or Green Star families. To ensure comfort and privacy, sessions can be conducted remotely from the client's own home. While most clients find resolution in just 2 sessions, some finish after the first, and only a small number require 3 or 4. To learn more, inquire about treatment, or donate, please visit 220.org, and that is the number 22 and 0 spelled out ZERO.org. And if you want to connect with Pam Darnell personally, she says, please call her if you are struggling. There's an 800 number on the website that will go directly to her, or you can call her personal cell at 931-638-7131. Or you can email her at Dr. Arnell, that's Arnell is spelled ARNELL, at 220.org. Again, thanks for tuning in. And don't forget, you can find Tactical Treasures Podcast on all your favorite podcast streaming platforms, American Grit, our website, tacticaltreasurespodcast.com, as well as our dedicated YouTube channel. We are now airing on Reese Cross America Radio on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern. And if you miss that, be sure to check out the encore on Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern. You can also find Reese Cross America Radio on the iHeartRadio app, the Odyssey app, and the TuneIn app. We're also proud to share that our JDog Foundation is a Reese Across America sponsorship group. For each $17 veterans wreath that you sponsor, $5 goes directly back to the JDog Foundation, whose mission is to prevent veteran suicide and heal veterans' mental health and PTS. You can donate right now at reachacrossamerica.org/JDog. Again, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again on another podcast real soon. Bye-bye now.